Saul Bass has got to be one of the greatest of all movie poster artists. His career lasted more than 5 decades. He started in 1950 and he was still creating posters into the 1990s. Before 1950, the great American movie posters tend to be beautiful, richly colored, and very detailed. And what you get with him is this minimalism and starkness. He's like our great modernist movie poster designer. There was nobody like him before, and he created a revolution in movie poster design. Since he also did the credit sequences of many great films, he was involved in the creation of the film, not just of the poster. No Way Out was a very important film Fox did about racism. It was made and released in 1950. Sidney Poitier made his movie debut in it. Saul Bass and a couple other young designers were all invited to create posters by 20th Century Fox. The only one that Bass did for this film was the insert poster. He won an award for design. This is a very interesting poster for 1950. You can see some of the starkness and some of the minimalism, and this is where the career starts. Very quickly in his career, Bass became very closely connected to Otto Preminger and started to design the title sequences as well as the posters for some of the great classics of Preminger's career, including Anatomy of a Murder, Bonjour Tristesse, In Harm's Way, and all these posters by Bass are highly collectible. Now, one thing about Bass's work is that he would come up with a design, and in those days they had many different sizes of movie posters. And each of the sizes will use the Bass design in a different way. So the insert and the 3-sheet and the 1-sheet all look a little different. Like on Bonjour Tristesse, the 1-sheet and the 3-sheet are both designed by Saul Bass, totally different posters. One of the great collaborations Saul Bass did with Preminger was on St. Joan. The 1-sheet for that is a beautiful, very modernist design with fantastic colors, which is unusual for Bass, whose posters usually are very simple colors. But then there's a 6-sheet. It's the same basic concept, the same basic color scheme, but wow, is it impressive in this large size. Probably the 2 most famous of all the Saul Bass posters are Anatomy of a Murder and Vertigo. Vertigo is one of the most famous of all the Saul Bass poster designs. And Bass also created the legendary title sequence with the spiral and the whirl. And that's right in the poster. Look at the 1-sheet for Anatomy of a Murder. What a stark, amazing, totally wild concept for a movie poster. And people love this poster. It's always considered one of the great all-time movie poster designs. Then you get to the remarkable Saul Bass silk screens, and these are amazing. He did these in very limited editions, between 50 and 200, depending on the title. He started in the mid-60s, and he was still doing certain titles as late as the 80s. They represent the purest concept that he had for the poster art. In some cases, like Budding Lake is Missing, he's taken what's kind of a cool poster and he's made it a little bit more pure. In the case of Advised Consent, this is a much starker poster than the red and black poster we're familiar with. The silk screens were not meant to be sold. They were basically things he made presents of to museums and to friends. The Cardinal silk screen, this is very different from the poster we've seen. It almost looks like a Rothko. Seconds is an ultra cool poster, and Paramount wanted nothing to do with it. Look at the horrible poster they used instead, which is not by Saul Bass. In the case of Magnificent Seven, talk about minimalist. Of course United Artists wouldn't use that design, but what a crazy design. Exodus, the silk screen is nothing like the 1-sheet. It's very, very much more intense. Brighter blues, the image is much more front and center. It's a very different thing. When I first saw the silk screen for Anatomy of a Murder, it was a shock. Colors are so different. It's such a bright, flaming scarlet red, and I'm used to it being orange. Apparently, the silk screen is really his preferred version. On The Man with the Golden Arm, Saul Bass didn't really like the photographs of the stars that the studio imposed on him. The 1-sheet does have the best version of that he could come up with as a compromise, and it's a beautiful poster. But the silk screen is the ultimate, pure, total Saul Bass. Such Good Friends is one poster the studio completely compromised. Only on the silk screen do you see it the way Bass intended it to be. In the case of Man with the Golden Arm, they made great posters that Bass designed, but there were other objects, and one of the other objects is this set of 3 45s for the soundtrack. It uses the original art without the faces, so it's the pure design of the hand, but each of the 3 records is printed in a different color. And record collectors tell me it's not so hard to find one of the 3, but getting all 3 together is really difficult. So it's an unusual Bass piece. Saul Bass, in a way, is a very strange choice to have designed the posters for Kubrick's The Shining, because The Shining is a very Baroque film. It's very over the top. And the posters are very, very stark and minimalist, and yet those posters have become the iconic sort of mythic posters for The Shining. So what you got in this poster is very bold colors, a borderless design. It's very much in the style of his early minimalist 50s posters. When you talk about Saul Bass, you're talking about one of the great American post-war artists. He had a huge influence on other artists that came after him, but there was nobody like him, and there never will be anybody like him again.